Go.
Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of We Vote. Today we are talking about whether or not the Democratic Alliance is in decline. Is the Democratic Alliance denying the reality that we can all see? For far too long, the narrative about the Democratic Alliance has been, we started off at 1% and every election we have been growing. And for 5 elections, that's been true. But in this particular election, we've seen a contraction of the DA from 22.23% to actual 20%. So they've dropped 2%. But more importantly, their expectation and trajectory was that by 2019, they would be at 27%. And they are not at 27%. They've missed their own target, right, and gone the reverse direction. So based on where they're supposed to be, they've actually lost 9% in terms of the projections that they were supposed to get. Now, a lot of people are saying the reason why the Democratic Alliance has lost is simply because Mmusi is a weak leader. This may be true, but it's not the full story. So let's unpack that full story right now. What are the various elements why the Democratic Alliance has actually failed to grow as a political party in South Africa? And then we'll look at what needs to be done. Number one, division. The Democratic Alliance has been divided and has been trying to hide that. You know, any unit that is divided and fighting amongst itself and is not a unified front is bound to have challenges of persuading other people to join them and spreading that message, because the generals of the army are not singing from the same hymn book. How has the Democratic Alliance been divided? They have been divided around this concept of representativity, which is having actual representatives from a different group and dynamic to speak and sit and deliberate in the bodies of power that exist. So Mmusi last year said that he wanted to have more black faces in Parliament. John Steenhuisen and several other people, Mike Waters, pushed back and said, no, they don't want that. That doesn't necessarily lead to better decisions. So Mmusi was trying to get more diversity. So when they went to conference, that was what the debate was about. And then Mmusi lost the vote because other people didn't want that. And the identity that the DA chose around diversity was that we are all diverse based on our individual identity. So if we have 10 Zulu boys in a room, those 10 Zulu boys are diverse because they weren't raised by the same mother, they didn't go to the same schools, didn't read the same books, and they think differently. Obviously, there's problems with that because you could extend that argument to 10 white men, to 10 people in positions of privilege. But also, the challenge is, if you've never grown up in a township, if you've never experienced certain hardships, one, you may not understand their urgency because you've never actually had to go through them. You may not understand the urgency of not having water in Khayelitsha, not having adequate electricity in Khayelitsha, because guess what? You grew up in Hout Bay, you grew up in privileged places. So having people who understand the situation on the ground does in fact lead to better representation, does in fact lead to better decisions and prioritization in policy making, formulation, and advocacy within the different branches of government. And that's something that the DA was debating, but they didn't resolve. It was a source of division. Another source of division was that their liberal identity. Were they going to be conservative liberals or progressive liberals or somewhere in between, right? The people within the DA who wanted a classic liberal identity rejected a lot of the liberal traditions that are currently dominating the global conversation. If you look at, for instance, the Democratic Party, which also includes identity politics, which also includes social justice. The DA has pushed back on the social justice element of liberal thinking to only identify with the classic thinking around liberal identity. What is that classic thinking? It's free markets, it's individualism, it's a rejection of collectivization or collective prioritizations. Everybody in South Africa agrees about the same things around freedom to vote, etc., etc. So the debate is really about, do you go classical or do you incorporate socialist or rather social justice elements into your thinking, which also includes collective thinking. So there was a lot of fighting, and this is where you started seeing emergences of things like this Purple Cow movement, which said, screw these guys, we're going this particular direction. You also had people like Gwen resigning, say there's no policy clarity within the DA. All of this was part of this fight around the ideological identity of the Democratic Alliance. That in and of itself put a lot of people off the party, right? So this division, this house divided, this lack of policy clarity and certainty is exactly what leads people to be repulsed by you. You know, Jesus once said that if you're lukewarm, he'll spit you out, or the Bible says that at some point, because lukewarm is just disgusting, it's irrelevant, and it's unpalatable to many. Policy clarity helps people in their decision making. A lack of policy and ideological clarity is exactly what we saw the Democratic Alliance exhibit. It's a problem, and it's one that led to a lot of criticism coming from the what the podcast, the media space, the journalistic, the thinking community, the intellectual community basically rejected this 2019 formulation of the Democratic Alliance. But this in and of itself is not the reason exclusively why the DA lost. I'm going to give you the other two. One, J.P. Smith and John Steenhuisen and Natasha Mazon, with the approval of James Self, decided that the time was up for Patricia de Lille and that they were going to have a go for her. Going for Patricia de Lille last year was a colossal mistake because, one, it made the DA look petty. Two, it made the DA look hostile to black women. It was the wrong time to even try to push that. And strategically, it was not prudent because she was at the end of her term. If they had let her finish her term gracefully, it would have been very difficult for her to actually come and say she's starting a new party, because everyone would have said, for what? You have been DA for the longest time. Why would you start a new party now? That would have eliminated a rival who has decreased the support of the Democratic Alliance in the Western Cape, because there's been a decline for them even in the Western Cape. The Democratic Alliance has lost 600,000 votes. And even if you include the ones that go to Freedom Front Plus, etc., that still doesn't account for their loss of support collectively. So attacking Patricia de Lille was a mistake. Steenhuisen, J.P. Smith made that decision. Natasha Mazon was the spokesperson of that decision. She was on every platform talking about this particular decision, defending it with legally unsound justifications. So even when a full bench of the Western Cape made a decision on this, Natasha Mazon was still saying that she knew more law than 3 trained judges who are experienced in deliberating in these issues. They were really doubling down on this strategy, and it flopped for them and it didn't work. But it did create the wrong narrative for the Democratic Alliance for many months. And Patricia de Lille is a fighter. She is a woman who knows her legal rights and who's willing to go toe-to-toe with anybody. She's been doing this. She's got a history of doing this. There's a case that we study in law school called de Lille versus Speaker of the National Assembly, where de Lille called people impimpi in parliament, and they tried to sanction her for saying that, and she took them to the Constitutional Court and won. So that's the worst person to go against in a court process, because she could beat you and she has the tools and the resources and the stamina and is very conversant in media and dealing with the public. And de Lille has schooled them once again. The scoreline is Patricia de Lille 5, Democratic Alliance 0. So that's another reason why they lost. That whole scandal and hoo-ha led to the wrong kind of media attention at the wrong time. Number 3, another reason why they lost. The Democratic Alliance, and this is the big reason, the Democratic Alliance has failed to attract young people to its platform. They do have Luyolo Mpiti and I'm gonna give you a breakdown. Luyolo Mpiti is a good guy. I think his heart is in the right place, but he just doesn't have traction among youth people. He's their youth leader right now. I'll give you an example. When he ran for SRC at Wits University, he barely got 1,000 votes. His Twitter presence right now is about 2,000 to 3,000 votes. He's number 15 on the DA list. They trust him. They're betting on him. Unfortunately, this young man doesn't have resonance with the demographic that they're trying to attract. So if you get a political nobody to the constituency that he's trying to attract, and then you hope that this political nobody will be able to attract the youth to the platform, that is betting on failure and doubling down on it, right? No offense to Luyolo, but he's not the right man for that particular kind of a job. Maybe he'll grow into it. I doubt it, because he's going against Vuyani Pambo, Mcebo Dlamini, Fasia, Shaira, and Yulo, and many others who are being churned by movements such as SASCO and the EFF Student Command and community organizations. Now, but deeper than that, the Democratic Alliance has failed to speak to youth, and particularly university students, to the extent that they've lost universities that used to be their strongholds. Universities such as UCT. UCT used to be a guaranteed win for the Democratic Alliance. It's no longer a guaranteed win. In their motherland, heartland, in the heart of DA-ness, they're unable to win. That's a massive, colossal failure, and it's one that speaks to a future where they're not going to grow, because university cycles are 4 years, right? They've lost the last crop. They're not going to get the next crop. They will continue to struggle in universities. So that's a challenge the Democratic Alliance is facing. That comes from a rejection of the conversations around race, identity, decolonization, access to university. The DA has been caught offside on all of those conversations. And to make matters worse, Helen has been tweeting in a provocative, confrontational way to a very vocal demographic, which speaks through social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and on the ground. This is why the Democratic Alliance is no longer acceptable or palatable to young people, and is being demonstrated in objective manners. In an objective manner, rather. How is this being demonstrated in an objective manner? Because the Democratic Alliance has been losing left, right, and center. They can only mention 3 universities where they have some kind of a stable base right now. But most of the universities they used to run, they don't run anymore. In fact, DA is a joke. DASO, at UJ, at WITS, across TUT, you name the campus, they are a joke. They don't have any credible ground, and they are a losing entity with a negative energy. Student leaders who want to grow and become better don't run under a Democratic Alliance platform, because who wants that kind of negativity in their life? Who wants to be laughed at as being the idiot who ran under DASO and lost, right? So those are the elements that have contributed to the loss of the Democratic Alliance support across the South African spectrum. Now, is Mmusi Maimane a weak leader? Yes, he is. His agenda has been very difficult to execute. The people within the Democratic Alliance who are sharing leadership with him don't respect them. He's not their general. Every time Mmusi says, let's go this way, they end up going a different direction. They don't respect him. He doesn't have authority. Should Mmusi Maimane remain the leader of the Democratic Alliance? Absolutely not. He is the fall guy, because what is it? The buck stops with him. That's what we say, right? So Mmusi has got to go, but he's going to Harvard, but some other people also need to go to various colleges. John Steenhuisen can go to Rosebank College. That's a good starting point for the matriculant. He's been a part of this. JP Smith has been a part of this. Natasha Mazone has been a part of this. Michael Cardo, Mike Waters have been a part of this. Helen has been a part of this. And James Self, the mastermind, the Thanos of the DA, has also been a part of this. He's also got to go to a particular college to work on his social justice understanding, because the Democratic Alliance has taken the wrong direction, and also choosing Soli as a candidate for Gauteng Premier was such a colossal disaster. Soli the Folly, he who hires bodyguards and untrained people, why would you hire him of all people? That was such a colossal disaster, poor decision making from the Democratic Alliance Big Three, and those people also need to be reallocated to learning centers across the country. So if the Democratic Alliance wants to come out of decline, they have to make those changes. If they don't make those changes, unfortunately, it's not that I'm against you. I don't have anything personally against your party. You are not going to grow, and this is the end of the road from you. You're going to move from 22 to 20, then you're going to move to 18, and then before you know it, you're going to be another cope. It's not something that's unforeseeable in this country's politics. If you don't wake up, if you don't shake up, you're going to get out. That's all the time we have time for today. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Remember to subscribe, like, share, comment, do the things to the pots, in the pot, thingalings. Yeah. So yeah, it makes sense. You understand. It's fine. Cheers. Till the next one.